This week on Quality Digest Live, learning lessons from cranky customers.
That was double the fun. Okay, and the battle over Baldrige funding takes on political overtones. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for August 19th, 2011. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Editor-in-Chief Dirk Ducharme. Okay, Mike, so for our next story, let me ask you a question. What's the best thing a customer can do for an organization?
Buy something?
Okay, what's the second best thing a customer can do for? Don't even answer that. Man, you're no fun at all. Actually, the best thing, or maybe the second best thing a customer can do for an organization is actually to complain. Mm-hmm. And we have a great story here by
Michael
Lowenstein. I'll bring it up here.
There it is.
This is actually a two-part story. Part two ran yesterday. Customer Advocacy Behavior Measurement by Michael Lowenstein. What this article is about is the importance of customer advocacy and how you can help promote it actually by monitoring complaints. Mm-hmm. And in part one, he basically just sets up the story. He gives some examples of outstanding companies in terms of customer loyalty and customer advocacy, and he gives, for instance, Zappos as an example.
Good example.
So part one kind of sets the scene. Part two, he's talking about being able to measure customer advocacy and why that's important, and in particular, he wants to focus on and does focus on complaints. Because, as we all know, it's easy to complain, it's not so easy to not complain.
Right.
And in fact, one of the things about complaints that he talks about in here is those people who have a complaint but don't report it. I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is it's easy to complain when you have something that's just really drastic. And
terrible, sure.
Terrible, and then we report it. But those usually are in the minority. Most of the complaints we have when we go into a restaurant or deal with customer service over the phone is it's annoying. You know, they didn't answer the phone on time, or they didn't quite answer my questions the way I wanted, or they didn't answer my questions at all.
Right.
But yeah, eventually problem got solved, but it wasn't a good experience.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is that most customer experiences are neither really terrible nor really great. If you have a really great or a really terrible experience, you're going to tend to want to talk about it. But if you just have one of those, okay, it got the job done, it was a little bit of a hassle, but whatever, those are the experiences that Lowenstein's saying in this article that are the ones that companies need to know about so they can improve their service.
Well, right, and kind of the thing that's interesting about that is he breaks these down into those customer complaints that are reported, those that aren't reported.
Yep.
And the problems with the ones that aren't reported is that they're still bad enough that you are potentially losing customers as a result of it. They didn't say anything, they didn't complain, they just didn't come back.
Right.
And he gives some examples of how we should deal with complaints. Some of these are just common sense. Mm-hmm. One of them isn't. The first three are common sense. You know, we should actively encourage customers to contact the company. You want to make it known to your customers that they should come to you with their complaints.
We're interested in hearing what you think.
Yeah, exactly. And you see that in the terms of, an 800 number, or maybe a customer survey that's right at the counter, or in some restaurants right there at your table.
Or when you complete a purchase online, you automatically
exactly, you have that. Right. Identify the root causes of all complaints. Well, obviously, that's a no-brainer. If you have a complaint, you want to find out what caused it. Number three, enhance the effectiveness of problem complaint resolution processes. Again, a no-brainer. Once you've identified the root cause, you want to go out there and work on it. The fourth one isn't as common sense. Oh, I shouldn't say is common sense, but isn't done very often, and that is to actually solicit complaints, is to go out to your customers and tell them we want you to report to us now. Even if you have a complaint, tell us about it.
Right.
And to solicit those, even in the form of surveys or phone calls or
even
whatever.
if they're minor complaints. We want to know how we're doing in the entirety of your experience, good, bad, or indifferent.
And here's the reason why. He gives an example. There was a Midwest financial institution that knew it had a complaint rate of about 50%. About half their customers would complain about some aspect of the service that the financial institution was providing. Well, they wanted to dig into this some more. So they started actively going out as opposed to passively waiting for their customers to contact them. They went out there and started actively contacting their customers and discovered that there were a lot more people, about 25% of their customers had complaints and didn't report them. One out of every 4 customers had a complaint and didn't say anything. Now this was crucial for this organization because there was a lot of data there that they could mine. There's all this customer information from this 25% of the customers that they could use to improve their products and services. And this is kind of one of the things that that Lowenstein focuses on in this story. And he brings up an interesting chart. If I can get to my slide here. He has this chart he uses in the story, and you can see across the top, this is really, to me, this is really fascinating. Across the top, he's got 5 columns. One is, did the customer complain? Did they have a complaint? Did they express it to the company? How was the complaint handled? Was it handled positively, negatively, or somewhere in the middle? And the advocacy portion, did the customer continue to use the product or service, and did they recommend the product and service to others? Now, right at the top, we see in this particular study, 55% of the customers had a complaint, had no complaint. They were happy with the product and service. And of course, their advocacy ratings were very high, 82%, 89% recommend. Now, for those who had a complaint, if we look at the column here where it says they expressed it, that means they proactively went to the company and said, I have a complaint with your product or service. This is the interesting part. If the conflict resolution, if the complaint resolution was handled in a positive manner, their advocacy rate was actually higher than those who had no complaint at all. In other words, they had a complaint, they went and talked to the company about it, the company was very good at dealing with it, so the customer walked away feeling better about the company than if they had no complaint at all.
No complaint at all. Fascinating, really.
Yeah, it is interesting. Now, obviously, you would on the flip side of that, as you would expect, if they expressed the complaint and it was handled negatively, yes. Obviously, these only 20% would continue to use or recommend the product. And if you were to mine into the data and looked at those who did not express their complaint to the company, those ended up about 50-50, just as the Midwest financial institution discovered as well. Is you have there's about 40% who don't express their complaint, and they are about 50 to 60% chance of either not using the product or not recommending the product. So this is what this whole thing points out is the importance of data mining from your customer complaints and being proactive about getting that information.
I think the other thing it points out is that a complaint is an opportunity, and it could be an opportunity to actually turn a customer that did not have a complaint. If a customer had a complaint, you could actually make them a better customer, more likely to use you again if you resolve that complaint in a very positive way,
right,
rather than those that have no complaint. So it's another opportunity. It's an opportunity for that company to interact with their customer and to find out what they did wrong, make it better, and keep that customer going forward.
Right, and this is obviously kind of the last bit of this is this all comes down to training your customer service representatives, your CSRs. Sure. You want them, you really got to impress on them that experience that you're giving the person who calls in the complaint, that experience has got to be a good experience.
Yes.
Even if the problem eventually even isn't necessarily resolved. If it seems like you're trying to resolve it, if you're gung-ho, if you're an advocate for your customer as a customer service representative, if you're doing your best, even if the complaint isn't resolved, they at least walk away thinking, well, man, these guys did their best to help me.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're not going to get an 87% advocacy rating, but
Right.
you're probably not going to get a 21 either. So.
Right. I mean, people are forgiving. Customers are pretty forgiving.
They just want to know you're trying.
They want to know that you're trying. You really
Exactly,
legitimately care about their product, their problem, and they're going to try to solve it. So,
Interesting article by Lowenstein.
Great.
Well, speaking of customer advocacy and quality improvement and company improvement, our next article is also interesting.
A great article by Bill Kalmar appearing in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can probably call it up on the screen here, called "The Cost of Quality It Might Sink Us." And this is Bill's take on, and Bill it was a Baldrige examiner for many years, and Bill talks about the Baldrige program, the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program, and the fact that the funding is very tenuous right now. As a matter of fact, and we'll get it straight from the source here in a moment, from our understanding of the funding has gone away now for 2012 as of October 1st, 2011. There's a lot of feelings on both sides of this. What is really the role of government? How much government should play in terms of American competitiveness? But certainly the Baldrige program was designed to enhance the competitiveness of U.S. companies, and that's the role. So the question is, if that federal funding goes away, how do we make sure that Baldrige continues forward? And
we have the man who could tell us, right?
We have the man who could tell us right now, Dr. Harry Hertz, and Dr. Hertz is the director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. We have Dr. Hertz on the phone.
Hopefully.
Harry, can you hear us?
Well.
Did we lose Harry?
We may have lost. Okay, well, Mike, tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about the program while I get a. Fortunately,
I have a lot of the information about the Baldrige program filed away in the back of my head. The Baldrige again is the performance excellence, and there's an award program that goes with that. And the Baldrige was founded in 1987, and it began in 1988. And Malcolm Baldrige was a commerce secretary in the Reagan administration in the 80s. He actually, as a young man, was a rodeo hand, and he died in a very tragic rodeo accident, actually, in 1987, July 25th, 1987. And Malcolm Baldrige, his name was then given to this program, which has been ongoing since 1988. And when it was implemented and funded by the U.S. government, and it's been funded by the government ever since.
Okay. Let me see. Dr. Hertz, do we have you there?
Yes, you do. We got lost for a while there. I've been leaving messages all over.
Sorry about that.
Harry, well, thanks for joining us. I just gave the viewers a little background on who Malcolm Baldrige was and the length of the program. Can you tell us now, basically, what is the status of the funding for 2012 federally right now for Baldrige?
Yeah, the funding status for 2012 is that the House of Representatives Appropriations Committee has approved or proposed, I guess propose is the right word, a budget for 2012 for the Baldrige program of zero. That budget has to go through the full House and has to go through the Senate yet, but that is the current House proposal.
And that's obviously as part of the debt deal that's been certainly very much in the news of late. To deal with the ongoing debt of the federal government?
Presumably, it's part of reducing the budget in order to meet the debt ceiling. Yes.
Right. Now, how much money are we talking about here? In other words, at what level was the program funded by the federal government in 2011?
In 2011, the program was funded at $9.6 million by the federal government.
And
go
ahead. I'm sorry.
I should point out that the program actually is a public-private partnership, so that is only a piece of the funding for the program.
What's the other piece?
The other piece of the funding is threefold. It's a private sector foundation for the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, which was established at the start of the program and has raised an endowment, and income from that endowment supports the program as well. The third piece is tremendous effort by volunteers who serve the program in an uncompensated manner. And for example, this year the Baldrige program has 600 volunteer examiners, and state-based programs tied to Baldrige have over 2,000 examiners. And then the final piece, of course, is fees. Applicants for the award have to pay fees associated with their application and its review.
Now, it's my understanding that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that aside from winning the actual award, there is no actual prize, right? No monetary prize or anything like that. It's just the fact that you've won this very prestigious award. Is that correct?
There is no monetary prize associated with the award. The recipients of the award have the right to use the Baldrige logo with the year that they received the award. Basically confers upon them some recognition for their level of performance. But of course, in exchange for that, the law requires that they share their successful strategies with other organizations throughout the United States.
Now, Harry, the money that we're talking about here, how is the money spent each year? How is it divvied up and how is it allocated to handle the functioning of the Baldrige?
Yeah, the money that comes through congressional appropriation, so through the budget process, supports the operation of our office at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. The money that comes through fees and through the foundation supports the efforts of the volunteers and also pays for the annual award ceremony to recognize the award winners. So there is no government money associated with that award ceremony.
Right.
Okay. Now, I've got to ask this question just because we've had a few in the past when we've talked about Baldrige funding. We've had a few of our readers present this question. In fact, just before we went on the air, we had a reader send in a statement as well that, and I'm going to pull one up on the screen here just because it's kind of indicative of some of what we hear. We had one writer say, look, I recognize that the government is having some problems right now, and no one is suggesting that quality is not important or that research into quality is important. The question is whether this is a proper role for government. I will emphatically state no. And we do have a lot of viewers and a lot of readers out there who just believe that the government should not be funding a program which basically is for industry. How would you address that? I mean, why should the government be funding something that really, for the most part, benefits for-profits? I realize there's a nonprofit aspect to this, but for the most part, if you look at the winners, most of these have been for-profit companies.
Yeah, actually, in recent years, it's been pretty much a 50-50 mix between for-profit companies and healthcare, education, and other nonprofits. But I think the key point really about what is the government's role in this program, why has the government supported it, is that the program is not really an award program. It is a national education program with one component being recognition of role models who then have to share their best practices. But the program really is about improving the competitiveness of all U.S. organizations through education and through development of a national enterprise that involves all the state programs as well, who are not funded through federal government funds, to, at a grassroots level, state and local, build the competitiveness of our country. And that's really a lot of the focus of what we're trying to do today, not only in this program, but improve U.S. competitiveness, create jobs in the United States. And maybe the single best number to give you an example of that is that we have about 80 applicants a year for the Baldrige Award, but last year alone we had 2.5 million page views of our criteria page of people and organizations using the criteria as their internal framework for improvement.
Now, do you have I don't know, some sort of anecdotal, or hopefully maybe not anecdotal, evidence that people are taking this criteria and embedding them within the organizational structure, the operational structure of their organizations?
Yeah, I think the single best examples of those are the number of organizations who have used the Baldrige criteria to further leverage an industry and an industry sector. And let me give you just a couple of examples of that. One example I'll give you is the American Healthcare Association, which is an association of nursing home and long-term care facilities across the U.S., and they have now created their own recognition process that is being widely used. I think they had on the organizations that have become involved in one way or another in their effort using the Baldrige criteria to improve performance of nursing homes and long-term care facilities across the U.S. The other example I'll give you is the Business School Accreditation Organization that has now adopted the Baldrige criteria as part of their accreditation criteria for accrediting business schools in the U.S., and this organization represents about half the business schools in the U.S. So the leveraging effect of the Baldrige criteria has sort of permeated many areas of the economy, and there are two examples.
Now, Harry, assuming that the federal funding does go away in 2012, and it appears that it probably will, the other resources that you mentioned, how do they step up to fill in that gap, or do they?
Well, we're working right now with the Baldrige Foundation and doing contingency planning in case that should happen. And their commitment is to the long-term sustainability of the Baldrige Program. Obviously, this all came about fairly quickly in recent weeks, and so we're working very hard with them to see what the program would look like and how we sustain the program, because everybody is committed to it because of the good it has done.
Absolutely. And what can rank and file people, readers of Quality Digest, viewers of this show, do to help support the funding and to try to convince government that this is something that needs to be continued?
Well, I think they have to make up their own minds. Obviously, I can't advocate one way or another as an employee of the government, but I think your readers need to do what they think is right in terms of informing, educating anybody they think they should.
Yep, absolutely. Good.
Okay, well, Dr. Hertz, we appreciate you taking time away from, I know you've got a really busy schedule. You were on phone calls all this morning, so we appreciate you taking 10, 15 minutes to spend some time with us.
And I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.
Well, that was Dr. Harry Hertz, and he's the director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. Gave us a unique viewpoint on the status of the program right now. And,
right, and actually, in interest of full disclosure, we should say that the Baldrige Program is also an advertiser with Quality Digest.
Yes. So we should disclose that as well.
Right.
But interesting stuff, and I think that Kalmar's point was that, all of us out there need to, if we consider the Baldrige to be important, need to take it upon ourselves to reach out and talk to our congressmen, talk to our senators, and I think we should support it.
A critical thing I think that that Harry mentioned is that, and I hadn't thought about this either, but what he was emphasizing is that, look, yes, there's an award and you're getting a prize,
right?
But that's the end of the whole thing. Basically, what it is, it's an educational process. It's putting the information out there. It's helping people to be more competitive by using these criteria.
The benchmarking is key. People that are past winners or people that have been state winners of Baldrige present a really good example for those that are maybe beginning their quality journey or are on the road, have been on the road for a while, of what you need to do, how you need to improve. It really is a program that we support here, certainly. And, but again, I think Harry made a good point. Everyone out there has to decide for themselves how they feel about it. And we've had people on both ends of this spectrum say that, yes, it needs to be supported, we need to have this in our industry, and others say it's not the role of the government. They're both fair points.
Right. And it's up to you to decide. Well,
and we have, we should just mention, we have the Baldrige.
Oh, yes.
Address. I think you have it at the bottom of the screen on the player page.
Yeah, there is a blog for
the Baldrige.
It's run. If you look at the URL, you'll see it is run by NIST. It's a blog specifically devoted to everything Baldrige.
Yeah, so check that out. At the URL is at the bottom of the screen.
Okay. Well, hey, it's been another great 25 minutes. Thank you all for joining us. Next week, corporate zombie syndrome. Brains. Zombies in business. Hey, we'll work anything into Quality Digest.
Zombies in business. I would think that they'd be very good at not following orders. But they would just move forward on a project without thinking.
One of our favorite authors, Davis Balistracci, he would say there's a lot of zombies in statistics. So I just,
And yeah, maybe. I wouldn't doubt it.
Maybe so. Okay.
But look out for that one. That should be a cool article next week. Thanks. And so that's it. Yeah, as Trick said, that's the show for this week. Thank you for joining us on another episode episode of Quality Digest Live. Look out for Quality Digest Daily this Monday and another great week of content. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.
See you then.
One, fire.